Yeah, I'm playing dress ups today wearing a hat, but anyway, hope everyone's doing okay. Let's talk about something wonderful in movies, something you can do as a binge, something you can do to increase your knowledge of movies. Let's talk about double features. When I was a kid, double features were really big in movies. You'd go on a Saturday afternoon, you'd see two movies, a cartoon and a newsreel. The first movie maybe wasn't as good as the second one, but stick around, the second one's usually got some interesting stuff in it. Didn't always happen, but it did occasionally. So I was thinking, we're all stuck in our houses at the moment. We're locked in, we're eating way too much, we're thinking dim, dark thoughts with a little bit of justification. But we need distractions, so double features might be the go. You might not be able to watch a 24-hour stretch of movies the way I did in a previous YouTube video, but you can at least watch two movies similar in theme, enjoy them, make some popcorn, drink something that's probably not good for you while you're doing it, and just go for it. So here are 3 double features you should check out. Westerns are cool. They've always been cool. They're always going to be cool, whether you go back to silent film days or you go to bone tomahawk. Westerns, to put it simply, are cool. So I thought I'd go with a couple of classic westerns. One of them's fairly well known, the other one not so much. And that's part of the fun of a double feature, seeing things that you haven't seen before. The movies I've chosen are Rio Bravo from 1960 and Bud Petticoat's Ride Lonesome from 1959. Both beautiful westerns, both classics, and I'm going to tell you about them now. Director Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo was the director's middle finger to a previous western earlier in the 1950s, that one being High Noon. Hawks was really pissed off because Fred Zinnemann, who directed High Noon, had created a film where the local sheriff begged for help when 3 gunslingers came to town. He begged for help from shopkeepers and people around the town, people who would pretty much get themselves killed going up against 3 gunslingers. Hawks thought he could do it better, and in my mind he did. Of course, you have to have John Wayne in it, so it's got John Wayne playing John T. Chance, the local sheriff, and he's pretty much the John Wayne character, though there is a little bit of humour in it as well. It's not John Wayne taking himself as seriously as he did in some other movies. Then you've got an actor who was breaking out of being the straight man in a comedy team that had been making movies for most of the 1950s. That, of course, was Dean Martin playing Dude, who used to be Chance's deputy but went on the grog when he had an unhappy love affair. Dude straightens himself out during the arc of the movie, and Dean Martin shows his chops. People didn't really consider Dean Martin to be a straight actor, but in movies like Rio Bravo and Some Came Running, he proved that he could do it, and once he proved that he could do it, he didn't need to do it again. So he went off and made TV shows into the 1960s, made a couple of films, made the spy movies with the Matt Helm spy movies in the 1960s, but they were all tongue-in-cheek. He didn't push himself after that. He proved to himself that he could do it, and he did it. And in Rio Bravo, Dean Martin really shows that he can give us a vulnerable and complex character. Then you get character actor Walter Brennan playing Stumpy, the guy who runs the jail. He's the comic relief almost, but he does have some depth and character to him. Walter Brennan, a really sophisticated actor, looks like a hobo, but he actually started out before he was working in cinema as a stockbroker until the Wall Street crash in 1929. Then he went into acting and never looked back. Then you have pop star Ricky Nelson playing Colorado, who's a cowboy who's very good with a gun, who's recruited to help Chance and his team take care of the bad guys. And then you get something that is pretty much, for this part of cinema history, unique. Howard Hawks had a real tendency to have strong, determined, self-reliant women in his movies. And in this case we have Angie Dickinson playing Feathers, a professional gambler who lives life on her own terms and is attracted to Chance, and Chance is attracted to her. So there's a little bit of a romance in there. But because it's a Howard Hawks movie, it plays out less cute than it might in other kinds of films. There are moments of cuteness in it. But Rio Bravo really does give us a kind of capsule film. It's all pretty much on one street in one town. It's tense, it's humorous, The characters all have their own arcs. It's a classic. If you like westerns and you haven't seen Rio Bravo, or you don't own a copy of it, you've got work to do. The second movie in the western double feature is one that I love, Lonesome from 1959. This is one of 7 movies that director Bud Bedicker did in the 1950s into the early 1960s with one actor, Randolph Scott. They're all filmed fairly cheaply. They're not very long films. They're usually filmed around the Alabama Hills in California, which is a beautiful location for westerns and have been used in silent film days. In this one, Randolph Scott plays Ben Brigade, a bounty hunter with a complex backstory, which is incredibly important to the way the film rolls out at the end. He's chasing some outlaws who have bounties on their heads, and as always with the Bud Bedicker Randolph Scott western, the characters are complex. The villains, played by Pernell Roberts, Lee Van Cleef, and James Coburn in his first movie role, all feel lived in. And I've said lived in about Rio Bravo, but I'm saying it again here. The characters feel lived in. And the lovely thing that Bedicker does is the protagonist, in this case Ben Brigade, and the antagonist, played by Pernell Roberts, are in some ways mirror images of each other. They're what the hero would have been if he had made bad and amoral choices. And so you get that tension between them, and you get an affinity between them because they're similar types of people. And the movie does something else that is kind of not quite unique, but is distinctive in the Bud Bedicker Randolph Scott westerns, which were known as the Renown westerns because Renown was a production company they had. And that is, when the climax comes in the film, it doesn't play out in a traditional way, the way, say, an Audie Murphy movie would play out. There's always a twist, there's always a bit of character that changes the way that the plot plays out. And also, Ride Lonesome has an iconic image at the end of it, which is incredibly symbolic to the storyline. It's just a perfect small western. And if you haven't seen it or the other ones, there are a bunch of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's A Tall Tea, 7 Men From Now, Decision at Sundown, Comanche Station, and a couple of others. They are almost kind of like a distilled essence of westerns. If westerns can be seen as beer, these guys are strong whiskey. They're tight, you don't have as much of them, but they're very strong and they're very precise, and I love them. So that's the westerns. That's the western double feature. We now move on to another genre that I love, and I've talked about this one on the channel before, Blaxploitation. Now, it was hard to find 2 movies to put together for a Blaxploitation double feature, for a really good reason. There were just so many I could have chosen. I could have gone with the obvious, which would have been Shaft and Superfly. I could have done a Pam Grier double feature with Coffee and Foxy Brown. I could even have done a Jim Brown double feature with Black Belt Jones and Three the Hard Way. Or I could have gone the horror route and done something like Blackula with William Marshall and Sugar Hill. But I didn't. I decided to kind of go with a couple of Blaxploitation movies that are filmed on location in black neighborhoods and also give value for their money, each in their own way. They're both comedies, one a lot more tongue-in-cheek than the other, but you've got to like them because for me they're the perfect Blaxploitation double feature. The first one is Cotton Comes to Harlem from 1970. It was right at the start of the Blaxploitation craze. It was directed by a man of colour, Ossie Davis, and it was based on well-regarded literary sources. In this case, the novels of Chester Himes, a black pulp writer from the 1950s, who wrote crime novels about a couple of New York cops called Coffin Ed Jones and Gravedigger Johnson, played in this case by Godfrey Cambridge and Raymond St. Jacques. Coffin Ed and Gravedigger, because they're black cops in 1970, have a lot of problem with authority. They get involved with a whole bunch of crime in Harlem, including a scamming preacher played by Calvin Lockhart, who's doing a back to Africa scam to try to get people to move back to Africa and away from America. And you also get a street hustler and a street vagrant called Uncle Bud, played by comedy legend Red Fox. Now, this movie has a lot of humour in it, but also has a lot of action sequences. There are some great car chases through the streets of New York. It was filmed on the street, so you get to see Harlem the way it was in 1970, and it's very, very cool. It's not a movie that's as well known as it should be, but it's definitely a movie you should check out. For the second one, I'm going with a little bit of an obvious choice, and I've talked about it once or twice before on the channel, but it's worth seeing. And that is Rudy Ray Moore's Dolomite. From the early 1970s, we all know the Eddie Murphy biopic that was done on Netflix recently, but this is the OG of that. Rudy Ray Moore was a nightclub comic who was down on his heels working in a record shop, came up with this idea of a character called Dolomite, and never looked back from there. Now, Dolomite is a pimp and a hustler, and he also raps. But I love Rudy Ray Moore playing this role because A, he can't act. He could not act his way out of a kindergarten pantomime. The other cool thing is the martial arts scenes, he has the coordination of a tasered drunk, basically. And that makes it fun too. The kung fu moves are really bad. They get a little bit better in the sequel, The Human Tornado. But in Dolomite, they're woefully bad. There are lots of girls in it. There's lots of really wild 1970s fashion. It's silly, it's fun, it's culturally based as well. And the battery went out on the camera. Yeah, just to kind of wrap it up with Dolomite, I love watching the locations where you can see what Los Angeles was like in the 1970s. I love watching old movies that were filmed on location because you can see what the places were actually like at the time. That was one of the nostalgia joys from Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He recreated Los Angeles as it was in the 1970s, or late 1960s in that case. But seeing how it originally looked is a lot more fun too. But Dolomite is ridiculous, it's over the top, it's transgressive, it's silly. But for me, it really works as an entertainment, and we want distraction at the moment. We don't want things where we have to think seriously, necessarily. I mean, you can occasionally dip into a more serious film. But I think most of the time at the moment we're looking for distraction, and that's definitely what Dolomite is. You can see it on Tubi.com, which is a free streaming service, and the sequels there as well, The Human Tornado. And you can also see a couple of other Rudy Ray Moore movies, including Disco Godfather and Petey Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law, which I recommend them all. Just go into them and have, yeah, why don't do 4 Dolomite movies, or 4 Rudy Ray Moore movies, if you want to have a long binge. But the two, then I decided to go for a James Bond double feature, because one of the types of double features that I really liked going to see when I was going to the movies back in the day was to see 2 James Bond movies back to back, and they often did that. So I decided to go with what for me is the best of the Sean Connery James Bonds, and the best so far of the Daniel Craig ones. The one I've chosen for Connery is 1963's From Russia with Love, which is the James Bond movie that stays closest to the original book, and I love it for that reason as well. It's got a tremendous cast in it, the action sequences are great, and they develop the style of the franchise really well. Of course, you've got to have beautiful women in it, and the main Bond woman in this one, I'm not going to say Bond girls because that's a little bit dated, but the main Bond woman is a Russian cryptographic expert called Tatiana Romanova, played by Italian actor Daniela Bianchi, who was beautiful. Not particularly a gifted actress at that time, but she really did have a look. You've got stage legend Lotte Lenya playing Rosa Krebs, a Spectre agent who is creepy as hell. Lotte Lenya really brings her A game to that. You've got Vladek Chabal playing Kronstein, who is the mastermind of the plot to capture James Bond in a honey trap by getting him to fall in love with and fall in bed with Tatiana Romanova, and thereby discrediting the British Secret Service. And last but not least, you have Robert Shaw playing Donovan Grant, Red Grant, the Spectre assassin who is sent to kill James Bond on the Orient Express. Robert Shaw was great in this one. There's that fantastic scene where Lotte Lenya punches him in the guts with brass knuckles and he doesn't flinch. I love that scene. I saw it years, and when it first came out I probably saw it. And that was the one scene I remember for a long time from Russia with Love. The bit with the brass knuckles was fantastic for me. This movie's got great action sequences, it's got beautiful overseas locations. It really does have that international Bond flavour about it, and Connery's good. He's solid, he's settling into the role beautifully at that stage, before he started getting a bit unhappy with this typecasting, and totally understand that. But for me, it just works. It's crisp, it's on point, and it's rewatchable. So then we get on to 2006 and Casino Royale. The first and possibly the best of the Daniel Craig James Bond films. No Time to Die hasn't come out yet when I'm filming this because of somebody eating a bat. But the reboot and the retcon on James Bond, taking him back to year zero almost, really, really works. It gives us a raw Bond, it gives us a 21st century Bond who's tough, brutal, and also emotionally vulnerable. They do a lot of things right in this film. The plot points from the original 1952 novel are there, but changed for obvious reasons. The structure of the movie is pretty good too. At the start you see Bond getting his 00 license. You see him having conflict with M, of course played by Judi Dench again. And you see him kind of developing into the person that we know as James Bond. And that is kind of cool. You've also got a lot of the plot points from the original novel. You've got the casino scenes, this time moved from north of France to Montenegro. And the casino scenes are used to ramp up the tension wonderfully. You've got the same villain, Le Chiffre, in this case played by Mads Mikkelsen, who is creepy as hell, and really sells it when there's the torture scene, getting information out of Bond. And it shows us Bond's toughness, it shows us Le Chiffre's desperation, and it's also really a hard scene to watch. And then of course you get the love interest. You get Bond falling in love with and then being betrayed by Vesper Lynd, played wonderfully by Eva Green. And that emotional complexity in the character is something that we'd never seen before. Before then it was all smirks and invisible cars and kite surfing, icebergs and all that kind of bullshit that we got in the previous iterations of James Bond. But this one gives us a complex and relatable Bond. And I'm going to miss Daniel Craig at the end of his tenure. I'm probably going to try to see No Time to Die as soon as it comes out. I may well review it on the channel. If you want me to, let me know. And just getting that closure on a particularly wonderful era of action cinema. So those are my 3 recommendations for binge watching double features. I want to do another 3 next time around. Let me know if you want me to. Let me know if there's a genre you'd like me to cover as well, because I'm happy to go and find some movies in a genre and then present them to you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider liking, and if you haven't already, subscribing to the channel. Let me know what your favourite double features are. I know I'm going to get a lot of George Lucas in there, but I'll wear that. But let me know what your double feature movies are. Let me know if there are genres you want me to look at. Happy to do so. In the meantime, keep watching great movies, keep watching shit movies, watch all sorts of movies, and also hang in there. We'll get through this. This isn't going to last very long, and we just need to look after each other, entertain each other, and just stay the course. We'll get through it, and we'll all go and hug and have a barbecue. I forgot to mention the fight scene on the Orient Express in From Russia with Love. It's really brutal and harsh. The stunt guys do terrific work, and the actors do terrific work on it as well. It is the second best action scene in a 1960s action film. So what's the best one? The chainsaw scene in Dark of the Sun in 1968 with Rod Taylor and Peter Carson. I'll just give you a little bit of that now because that was cool. I'll catch you guys next time.